understand.
I hate
Go
to
away.
trouble you.
Remember when showing a successful black family
One of the longest aired sitcoms in American movie history, The Jeffersons, created by Norman Lear, was not just a spin-off from All in the Family, it was a sensation of its own. However, certain things about the movie made it stand out. Join us as we unravel 20 weird facts you didn't know about The Jeffersons. Number 20. It was a spin-off of the series All in the Family. The show, which is currently 50 years since its premiere on CBS, was a spin-off of the hit series All in the Family. However, no one could have predicted that the movie would ever make television history. While in All in the Family, George and Louise Jefferson met as Archie Bunker's outspoken neighbors in Queens. It was their feisty personalities, which included George's sharp wit and Louise's wisdom, that made them stand out on the show. This then convinced Norman Lear in the mid-70s to make them from Queens to Manhattan's Upper East Side to begin their own sitcom-based successes, started by George's dry cleaning chain. Having been considered one of the most influential black shows of all time, it was aired from the 18th of January, 1975 to July 2nd, 1985. During the course of the show, it featured 11 electric seasons of laughter and love. These 11 seasons were further split into 253 episodes, outlasting All in the Family, which had lasted for only 9 seasons. This made The Jeffersons one of the longest-running sitcoms of its era. In the first season, it ranked as the 4th most watched show on television. That was a very close ranking to All in the Family's rating, as it was number 1. Number 19. George was a janitor before dry cleaning clothes. George Jefferson was not so different from his former neighbor Archie Bunker, as he was loud, proud, and sometimes arrogant. However, he had truly humble beginnings. One distinct feature of the two was that George was much smarter and ambitious. George started as a janitor and survived daily on limited opportunities until he was involved in a car accident that resulted in a $3,200 in insurance settlement. He then took the money and purchased his first dry cleaning store. From there onward, George expanded his business into a 7-store chain that aided him in amassing wealth. It was this wealth he took to move up to Manhattan's Upper East Side. It was a typical example of upward mobility that most members of the black community could resonate with. It also served as an ample explanation for George's pride, obsession with status, and defensiveness when challenged later on in the movie. Most audiences just concluded that he never wanted to return to those humble beginnings. Number 18. A group of Black Panthers helped launch The Jeffersons. In his autobiography, producer Norman Lear wrote about how Good Times and the Black Panther contributed to helping him create The Jeffersons. The Black Panthers are a group of revolutionary thinkers known for activism in the 90s. He recalled that 3 members of the Black Panthers came to his office to complain about the way black people were portrayed in Good Times. They told us that every time you see a black man on the tube, he is dirt poor, wears shit clothes, and can't afford anything. That's bullshit. They emphasized that the show leaned too heavily on stereotypes, especially with George's catchphrases and buffoonish behavior. They argued that this often put Evan's family in a bad light while reinforcing a negative image of black life in America rather than breaking them down. It was that criticism that prompted Lear to reconsider. So instead of a continuous portrayal of a struggling family narrative, he opted for something different. An African-American family that made it to the top. That African-American family was The Jeffersons, the first U.S. sitcom to portray an affluent black family. Eventually, they did not just drink scotch. The movie went on to win awards. Number 17. The first George Jefferson was a fake. It was Norman Lear who decided that George Jefferson's role would be played by Hemsley from All in the Family, living close to Archie Bunker. He had seen Hemsley earlier on Broadway, way before All in the Family started, and kept him in mind. When the time to cast members of The Jeffersons came, a decision had to be made about who George would be in Season 1 of All in the Family. At that time, Hemsley was doing a play in San Francisco, and they could not locate him. Eventually, when his location was tracked down, he was unavailable thanks to his stage commitments. However, instead of looking for another character to replace Hemsley, Lear held George's character for 3.5 seasons. keeping George out of sight until Hemsley was done with his Broadway contract. During this waiting period, Henry Jefferson, George's brother, played by Mel Stewart, served as a placeholder. He had the same temperament as George and looked a lot like Hemsley, hence the reason for the name Fake. He appeared in the first 4 seasons of All in the Family, but never made it to the Jeffersons, even though he was mentioned occasionally. It is important to note that although their acting was impeccable, Hemsley was 21 years younger than Sanford. That is, George was 21 years younger than Louise in real life, as Sanford was 58 years old when the Jeffersons began to air, although in the movie they are of the same age. Number 16. The series houses several guests. For many reasons, the Jeffersons would never be out of our heads, sometimes for the witty banter, sometimes for George, his character and his temper, and for others for the number of stars that grace the show with their presence. In its 11 seasons of pure entertainment, the show became a magnet for big names across entertainment, sports, and music. For instance, the actor Billy D. Williams, who was already a rising star before his role as Lando Calrissian in Star Wars, appeared on the show as himself, as George tries to charm him into speaking at a charity event. Additionally, the legendary singer Gladys Knight made a guest appearance in Florence's Spie moment alongside an unrecognized singing legend. This did not stop at just entertainment. Guest appearances also trickled down to sports figures. The boxing legend, Joe Frazier, also made an appearance in an episode set in Atlantic City during the show's final season in 1985. He was not alone, though. He came aboard with other stars like Phyllis Diller, Charlie, Engelbert Humperdinck, and Michael Spinks. The appearance of all of them at once was an attempt to boost ratings. However, these were not the only cameos. There were about a dozen other recognizable faces over the years, from comedians to dramatic actors. This never-ending cycle of high-profile guests gave the show an extra sparkle, reminding audiences that the Jeffersons lived in a neighborhood in New York where celebrities were easily your neighbors and friends. It was also an attempt to chase clout. Given the magnitude of the show at the time, being invited to the Jeffersons was a surefire sign that you had made it. It was also a way to sustain the audience's interest. Number 15. The show was canceled by CBS without the knowledge of the cast. In 1985, 2 months before the show's eventual final episode aired, CBS canceled the Jeffersons show without properly informing members of the cast of their decision. The news came as a surprise to the cast members, and most expressed their dissatisfaction with the sudden decision. Hemsley reiterated that they were all shocked by the news and that he had learnt about the decision through newspapers. Cover, on the other hand, said he had learnt about it while watching Entertainment Tonight. As for Sanford, she found out about the cancellation through a phone call. Her cousin had read the news in a tabloid and had called to inquire if it was true. Years later, Sanford still expressed that she was upset about the show. She is noted to have said, "I thought they could have at least called us back, and maybe we had like an hour closing show." You see, the other sitcoms had a closing show. Mary Tyler Moore, MASJ, and the others who were playing with us at the same time all had closure. I thought we should at least have that respect. We had been running as long as they had. At the time, a reunion show was suggested because of the offhand dismissal by which the cast was treated. Sanford wanted nothing to do with it. At one point, a 1-hour reunion show was written and ready to go, but Sanford scrapped it. She later explained this move to Rosie O'Donnell. "If we cannot come back as we were, or even better, I don't want to come back." Number 14. The nickname. Weezy was inspired by a real-life nickname. George kept using an endearing nickname for his wife, Lois, throughout the movie. It was Weezy, although many viewers thought he simply came up with the idea, or that the writers had randomly selected it. However, the truth is that it came from Sherman Hemsley's real life. Although the character of Louise Weezy Jefferson did not appear until after several episodes of Season 1, she had been mentioned in Episode 3. Hemsley had come up with the nickname Weezy in his youth. He had used it on a woman he had a crush on in his Philadelphia neighborhood, named Louise. One day, while filming an early episode of The Jeffersons, he accidentally addressed his on-screen wife as Weezy during his typical George outburst. He then suggested the name to All in the Family executive producer Don Nichol, asking George to make his pet name for Louis. Nichol agreed, and Sanford liked the name, so they agreed to leave it at Weezy. With the name holding a depth of meaning for Hemsley, was easy for him to show a depth of emotion while he addressed Louise by the name. It also created a warm connection between the two. Weezy often softened his fiery and brash personality, showing the audience that, despite his occasional outbursts, he genuinely cared for his wife. The nickname thus became one with Sanford's character, as she was then known to be Louise Weezy Jefferson. When addressing her character, one image that readily comes to mind is that of George, calling out Weezy. Number 13. The Jeffersons won only 2 Emmy Awards after several nominations. Although the series, The Jeffersons, ran for 11 successful seasons and was one of the longest-running sitcoms and one of television's most groundbreaking series, its impact was not equal to the number of awards it won. Over the years, the show received 13 primetime Emmy nominations, but unfortunately, it only won in 2 categories. Isabel Sanford, otherwise known as Weezy, got 7 nominations in the Outstanding Lead Actress in a comedy series from 1979 to 1985. In 1981, she finally won the category, making history as the first black woman to win that award. Hemsley, on the other hand, who played the role of George Jefferson, received only 1 nomination during the show's entire run. He was nominated in 1984 for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Comedy Series, but did not win. Many fans and critics of the movie consider it one of Emmy's oversights, given that his character had become iconic. Gibbs's sharp-witted housekeeper Florence was also a fan favorite, and often made headway whenever she bantered words with George. She received 5 nominations for Outstanding Supporting Actress in a comedy series between 1981 and 1985, but never won. Later on, she joked about being the Susan Lucci of sitcom Emmys, due to her frequent losses of the award despite her popularity. The only other Emmy award the movie ever received came in 1983 when it won for Outstanding Videotape Editing for a Series. However, this honor did not go to the script or the hard work of the cast, but rather acknowledged a technical achievement. Hemsley later shared his theory on why the Jeffersons, despite having amassed a myriad of nominations, were largely overlooked and won only 2. He theorized that there were a lot of big-name shows then, Donnie and Marie, Sonny and Cher, and a host of others, while they, the Jeffersons, were the unknowns. He believed that they were a show that beat every other show out in terms of viewership and acceptance, and did not think that the other movies appreciated that fact. Number 12. Lionel Jefferson was played by 3 characters. The first member of the Jefferson family to be introduced to the audience was Lionel Jefferson, yet the role was played by 3 different characters, from the pilot testing to All in the Family and finally to the Jeffersons. D'Urville Martin played the first role of Lionel Jefferson in 2 unaired pilots for All in the Family. That is, he never got to be aired on screen. The next was Mike Evans, who was a co-creator of Good Times, was also the first Jefferson to be introduced in All in the Family, coming on screen long before Archie Bunker. However, other cast members began to notice that Mike felt like the Jeffersons was his. He had also reportedly told Norman Lear at a Christmas party that Hemsley and Sanford were getting all the limelight on his show. He also threatened to leave if Lear did not give his character more screen time, but Lear was having none of that and paid no heed to the threat. Mike played the role of Lionel for 5 years on All in the Family until The Jeffersons premiered in 1975. He then played the character for 1 year on The Jeffersons before he left to focus on writing Good Times. Eventually, Mike Evans was replaced by Damon Evans in seasons 2, 3, and 4. Mike Evans then returned to the role in season 5, 1979, and remained in it till the end of The Jeffersons. Mike Evans and Damon Evans were not related in any way. Number 11. Sanford won an Emmy Award for her role in the series. The show was so popular in the late 1970s and even reached number 3 on the Nielsen ratings. Yet, the only cast member to receive an Emmy Award was Isabel Sanford. She was nominated a total of 7 times for her role in the movie. She had been nominated and had lost those categories twice, so she had honestly given up on winning when she was finally honored with the award. This made her the first black actress to win the Best Actress award in a comedy series. In an effort to maintain a nonchalant attitude, she began chewing cheese while the announcement was being made. However, when Hemsley told her that her name had been called, she threw her cheese back in surprise, and Lonnie Anderson caught it. She then went upstage to give her acceptance speech, still chewing her cheese. There, she acknowledged the award to only two people, whom she called by name. The first was God, and the next was Norman Lear. Her portrayal of Louise Jefferson Weezy was top-notch, and the award was an acknowledgement of her efforts. The actress had once admitted to discussing with the movie director how to fashion her character based on her experience with her husband. In her words, "I said, I wouldn't come running in asking George how his day was. Black women don't do that." It was that feel of authenticity and creative mindset that distinguished her performance on the show. Number 10. Jaleel White admits to being oblivious of what he was doing but having enjoyed it. Today, Jaleel White is best known for his role as Steve Urkel in Family Matters. However, a long time before that role, he made an appearance on The Jeffersons. At the time, he was just 3 years old and appeared on the 1984 episode Ebony and Ivory, playing the little boy dressed as an angel for a school play. This was White's official debut in Hollywood, even though he, at the time, was too young to understand what was happening around him fully. Years later, he admitted in interviews that he had no idea what he was doing at the time, but that he remembered enjoying the experience because everyone on the set made him feel comfortable and included. This cameo on The Jeffersons marked the beginning of a long television career for White, and 5 years later, at the age of 13, he landed the huge role by which he is now remembered. Number 9. The Willises were the first interracial couple to appear as regulars on a TV series. With the premiere of The Jeffersons in 1975 came the introduction of an affluent black family. However, this was not all. It also introduced the audience to the neighbors of the Jeffersons, Helen and Tom Willis, characters played by Roxy Roker and Franklin Cover, respectively. These two made waves as the first interracial couple to have ever appeared on an American television series as regular characters. This is not to downplay the work of Love and Lucy, which featured the first interracial marriage in film history. Although in 1967, interracial marriage had been legalized nationwide through the Supreme Court, it was not yet widely accepted in the United States, not to mention the movie industry. The constant display of the marriage was a direct challenge to television norms. This earned the CBS network a lot of hate mail, but that did not deter the progress. Funnily enough, Roxy Roker was indeed married to a white man in real life named Cy Kravitz, who was a television producer and was the father of musician Lenny Kravitz. She brought her experience to the show and gave it a more realistic mien. She also insisted that the Willies be portrayed as a loving, normal couple, free from all sorts of stereotypes. The portrayal of the Willises was like a representation of the unacceptable minority in a way that made them feel like they belonged in the world. Number 8. An actress on another Norman Lear show wrote and performed the theme song. Unknown to many fans, Jeanette Dubois, who had played the role of Willona Woods on Good Times, wrote and performed the theme song for The Jeffersons. She had asked Lear if she could do something bigger than her role on Good Times, and he had tasked her with writing a theme song for the series. To achieve this feat, she teamed up with composer Jeff Barry, who was a veteran pop songwriter, to create an upbeat track. Even though Barry came up with much of the composition, Jeanette infused the lyrics with gospel joy and performed it with an infectious energy that rubbed off on the audience. Dubois' daughter, Keisha Gupta Fields, once explained that her mom wrote the song as a promise to her own mother. She had promised that when she attained a certain level of stardom, she would make her mother live in a deluxe apartment. It was this promise that was wrapped up in a gift package and sung as a gift to Lillian Dubois. The theme song, Moving Up, was not just grounded in the story of growth. It set the tone for George and Louise's climb from Queens to a deluxe Manhattan apartment. It is also recorded currently as one of the greatest theme songs in the history of television. Number 7. There were 35 back singers for the theme song. The delivery of the theme song for The Jeffersons was not a one-man band. In fact, it involved the lead singer, Jeanette Dubois' powerful lead vocals, and an army of 35 backup singers from a gospel choir that gave the song a celebratory gospel energy. Among these backup voices was the veteran backup artist Orrin Waters, a renowned session singer of the famous Waters family who is popular in the world of recordings, TV themes, and movie soundtracks. He heartily sang along to Dubois during the "Now We're Up in the Big Leagues" lyrics. Aside from his family records, he has accompanied singers like Santana, Whitney Houston, Barbra Streisand, Dolly Parton, and even featured on Michael Jackson's Thriller album. The use of a gospel choir for an opening theme song was unusual at the time for a television series, as most sitcoms opted for light-hearted, small-scale theme songs. The music choice and the decision for a choir worked magic. The music was not only pleasing to the audience, even their hearts also danced when they listened to it. Number 6. The Jeffersons, as a show, produced another spin-off. Once the name The Jeffersons comes to mind, we are easily reminded of the fact that it is a spin-off of Norman Lear's earlier show, All in the Family. However, what most people do not know is that even The Jeffersons produced its own spin-off show. It was a short-lived series called Checking In, which premiered in 1981, just after season 7 of the show. This spin-off centered around Jefferson's sharp-tongued housekeeper, named Florence Johnston, a character played by Marla Gibbs. In Checking In, she left the Jeffersons' household to become the executive housekeeper at a swanky Manhattan hotel. The show followed her misadventures with managing staff and guests. It was a mix of comedy and Florence's natural sass. Unfortunately, despite Gibbs's popularity, Checking In did not make waves as one would have expected. It premiered on CBS in April 1981 and was canceled after only 4 episodes due to low ratings. The producers then quickly found a way to write her character back to the Jeffersons, where her character was more appreciated. Upon her return to the Jeffersons' home, she explained that the hotel had burnt down. Checking In was not just one in the chain of spin-offs. All in the Family birthed. It was a show that indicated how strong Florence's character was. She was one of the first black female characters to have her own show, making her a central figure on television. Number 5. Marla Gibbs worked at an airline for 2 years while doing the show. The actress Marla Gibbs, who played the role of housekeeper Florence Johnston on The Jeffersons, was working as a reservation agent at United Airlines in Los Angeles when she landed her role in the series. At the time, she was not sure she was going to be on the show for long, especially with her belief that Florence was supposed to be a one-time guest appearance. To ensure that she was not just chasing the wind, she made a decision. According to her interview with the Washington Post, she said, "And I stayed with the airline an additional 2 years. I was doing both things, because in my world, a bird in the hand is worth 20 in the bush, so I wasn't ready to give up the airline yet. Besides, I had unlimited passes." She shuttled between her job during the day, checking in flights, booking reservations, and filming in the evening. She also balanced single parenthood with financial stability. However, by the late 1970s, Gibbs realized that The Jeffersons was a success. She finally resigned from her job at the airlines to focus solely on acting. She later explained that her decision was also birthed by her knowledge of how unstable Hollywood careers could be, especially for black actresses at the time. Her choice paid off. She became one of the most iconic characters in The Jeffersons and earned a spin-off being produced in her honor. She even bagged 5 Emmy nominations for her role as Florence, proving that she had the grit and inner workings to create a lasting success in the entertainment industry. Number 4. Isabel Sanford initially did not want a spin-off. At the time, the production team and CBS Network decided to create a spin-off of All in the Family named The Jeffersons, but not everyone in the cast seemed to agree with them, especially not Isabel Sanford, who played Louise Weezy Jefferson. In a 1992 interview with Rosie O'Donnell, Sanford admitted that she was reluctant to leave All in the Family for a straightforward reason. It was because All in the Family already had a high rating and had become a safe anchor that resonated well with the audience. There was no telling if leaving such a successful show for uncertain, murky waters would be worth the bet. She felt like she was giving up a sure source for a mirage. She then associated her hesitation with her zodiac sign, saying, "I'm a Virgo. I wanted to stick with the sure thing." For her, the risk was not just professional but deeply personal. As of the 1970s, television was not particularly accepting of black actresses in lead roles. Therefore, giving up one that offered her that platform, given its success rate was not guaranteed, was a Herculean task. However, when she was told that the Jeffersons was going to happen with or without her, that statement changed her mind. She was told that if she did not join, the producers would move forward anyway, and her character, Louise Jefferson, would no longer appear on All in the Family. So she was left with the decision to either continue Louise's journey in the Jeffersons or risk being left behind entirely. That threat jostled her awake, and she decided to take the leap of faith. Years later, her decision paid off. She went on to film in the 11 seasons of the longest-running sitcoms in American television history. She also made history with her Emmy Award when she became the first black woman to win the award. Her initial hesitation proves that sometimes it is in the unexpected that one flourishes the most, and sometimes all we need is a push to begin. One thing is certain, that this role defined Sanford's career for a long time. Number 3. Norman Lear often featured transgender characters in his sitcoms, and The Jeffersons was no exception. One of Norman Lear's trademarks in movie production was his willingness to push against boundaries that were acceptable to other sitcoms. As of the 1970s, the issues of gender identity, sexuality, or conformity were taboo to maintain mainstream television. However, not for Lear. He brought transgender and non-conforming gender characters to the screens in the view of Americans, using comedy as the steering wheel for deeper conversations that were largely avoided by others. One notable example was in All in the Family, where he introduced the character of Beverly LaSalle, who was a female impersonator played by Laurie Shannon. She was the first gender non-conforming character in a primetime sitcom. Then, in All That Glitters, he introduced Linda Merkland, played by Lois Nettleton, who became the first transgender regular character in American television history. In that particular series, Linda played a central role. Then came The Jeffersons, and he infused this touch of his legacy into the script. It began in the 1977 episode, Once a Friend, where George reconnected with an old Navy friend named Eddie. He was only shocked to discover that his old friend had transitioned and was now living as a woman named Edie. The episode also exposed us to George's initial discomfort and confusion, but ultimately emphasized acceptance, dignity, and honesty in living one's truth. Having been portrayed in a sitcom, it was a bold approach, as it could negatively affect the movie's ratings or viewership. We'll never know, but it was an attempt by Lear to be all-inclusive, portraying what was really going on in our human societies. It had managed to sincerely talk about and embrace the social politics of gender identity. Number 2. Sanford and Hemsley had off-stage nicknames for each other. What made the on-screen marriage between Isabel Sanford and Sherman Hemsley so believable was the genuine bond they shared off-camera despite being years apart. Their playful teasing and giving of nicknames transcended television and extended to real life. Sanford, the older of the duo who often carried herself with dignity and poise, often thought of Hemsley as a smaller man than she had pictured for her television husband for the Jeffersons. Hemsley was 5 feet 6 inches tall and weighed about 130 pounds. This was in direct contrast to what Sanford had imagined when she first heard she would be paired with George Jefferson. In her words, "I was thinking someone like Roy Glenn, a big guy." She did not expect to see someone like Hemsley, whom she jokingly described as all neck. In his defense, Hemsley emphasized that they were looking for someone thin and feisty, which was a description he fit perfectly into. That good-natured observation of him birthed the nickname she addressed him by off-screen, Neck. That was her way of teasing him for being slim but feisty enough to play the role of George Jefferson, her on-screen husband. Now, nickname giving went both ways, and Hemsley definitely had one for Sanford. He and many of the cast members referred to her off-screen as the Queen. This was not as a result of some backhand diva behavior, but rather as a result of the natural dignity and authority she wielded within her. Marla Gibbs and Hemsley made a point of duty to emphasize that she was not difficult to work with in any way, but just carried herself with natural grace. She walked and even spoke with a regal presence, making the name Queen befitting of her in the eyes of her colleagues. Number 1. They were both questioned by random strangers after the series' release. The duo of the Jefferson couple achieved groundbreaking success with the movie. This was revealed in their authenticity and how real they felt to their audiences. In fact, strangers in the form of fans and critics often accosted and confronted Isabel Sanford and Sherman Hemsley in public about their on-screen marriage. For Isabel Sanford, who played the role of Weezy Louise, people frequently asked her how she could endure George Jefferson's volatile temper, arrogance, and stubbornness. Her response to this was often humorous, as she famously responded with, "If you were getting the money I'm getting, you would stand him too." She also took time to explain why the Jefferson marriage worked. In her words, Louise kept George in tow. That's how it lasted that long. He listened to her, and what she said was the last word. Whether he thought she had the last word or not, she had the last word. To Sanford, the marriage was successful on the premise that Louise balanced George's frequent outbursts with quiet strength and acknowledged that George paid attention to her opinions, even though he would never admit it. This, for her, was the premise of their successful on-screen chemistry and marriage. Sherman Hemsley was not left out of the onslaught, as he shared similar experiences with being accosted and questioned. In a 1998 interview, he recalled being approached in Texas by a woman who outrightly told him, "I should slap you in the face for the way you treat your wife." Rather than take offense, he calmly explained what made George's antics work. In his opinion, the reason audiences tolerated George's arrogance was that his love for Louise was always clear, equating it with Archie Bunker's love for Edith in All in the Family. As he rightly put it, "By me loving Louise, you get away with being goofy and stupid because people say, at least he loves something." He also emphasized that beneath all the jokes, the show layered in moments of genuine emotion. In his words, "We showed a lot of love and concern and compassion. We had a few more serious bits every once in a while, which was hard for us because we were so used to doing the crazy stuff." After 50 years of its premiere on-screen, The Jeffersons still resonates with real-life situations and shows that with hard work and smart investment, upward mobility is possible. From off-screen banter to on-screen chemistry, which of these facts do you love most? Share in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen.